Hello, welcome to Encore here on France 24. I'm Richelle Harrison Plesse. Coming up. Philippe Jordan has been waving the baton at the Paris Opera for close to a decade as the prestigious company's musical director. The maestro is currently conducting a rare version of the Giuseppe Verdi epic masterpiece Don Carlos, marking the 150th anniversary of the Grand Opera's premiere. Philippe Jordan, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you very much.
Now, you've just finished work on Debussy's Pelléas and Mélisande, as well as Mozart's Così fan tutte at the Opera Bastille. You're currently conducting Verdi's Don Carlos. Now, there are so many versions of this grand opera, but this one in particular is pretty special.
Yes, it is, because the French version, which was the original version, because Verdi wrote it for the Paris Opera, we're playing this in French, in 5 acts, because sometimes you can do only the 4 acts, and we do the whole version. But also we play all the parts Verdi composed for the Paris Opera, and at the time he was already forced to make cuts during the rehearsals, after the second performances, because the trains to the banlieue
To the suburbs.
They left at 11 o'clock, so he had to make cuts. And so even at his time, the Paris Opera, or in Paris, the Don Carlos he composed it for, was never played in the full length he intended it. So it's the first time actually in Paris we play this full version.
And as you said, it's being sung in French, whereas usually we see versions in Italian.
Absolutely.
It was translated into Italian. Well, let's take a quick look at a clip from Don Carlos. Jonas Kaufmann as Don Carlos there. Now, when I watched you in action for Don Carlos, I saw the show this week, I saw concentration, but also great passion. How does conducting an orchestra make you feel?
Well, it's if everything is right and in place, and you have great singers and a great production, and the orchestra responds to your intention, and thank God it's the Paris Opera Orchestra. We know each other for a long time, so we know each other very well. So
You're like family now, I suppose.
Absolutely,
yeah.
There's a big trust. Yeah, I know what I can ask, I know what I can get, and this trust is very important. And doing a masterpiece like Don Carlos, I think it's one of my preferred operas. To create it from the beginning to the end, because you're on stage with the orchestra all the time, so you can really influence the atmospheres and the emotions and the passions and intentions. If it works, it's the greatest feeling. Yeah.
When it works, it really works. Now, you often work with dream casts, performers at the top of their game. How do you get the best out of your singers and musicians?
Well, first of all, you make the choice, yeah. With Don Carlos, we have the luck, we have the greatest singers for that right now available. Jonas Kaufmann, Elina Garancha, Ilda Abdrazakov, Sonia Yoncheva, Ludovic Tiene. It's amazing. So you have this talent and this great personalities, and at the same time, as a conductor, you have kind of a frame how to move in, and sometimes you have to be very flexible to help them to as well be attentive to their needs and their ideas, but at the same time you give them a frames, because there's a certain style, especially the French version. You don't sing it in an Italian way because the language is different. It's a different way of attitude and different way of sound. It's more French opera. So you discuss this with them, and it's a great exchange somehow. Yeah, you give something, you take something, and they do the same thing. So it's sometimes in a good performance, it's like playing tennis, yeah, or ping pong. You give with the orchestra, same thing. Yeah, you give an impulse, you get another impulse back, and it's very stimulating.
Well, it's funny you mention exchange. Let's hear from Ludovic Tiene on what it's like working with you. He plays Rodrigue in this production of Don Carlos currently at the Paris Opera.
He's young, he's dynamic, and he's sharp. You can see that in the eyes. He's somebody very, very clever, obviously, full of energy. Actually, he drags very much what you have to do on stage. He never allows people to stay kind of lazy, musically on stage. He wants the right pace to go through a piece without any moment that collapse a little bit. So it's always very important to stay alive with him.
Ludovic Tiene there. Now, you've worked with so many prestigious companies and venues throughout the world, from the Royal Opera House in London to the Scala in Milan. You've been musical director at the Paris Opera since 2009. What's so special about the Opéra de Paris?
Well, already we have two houses. We have the big Bastille and we have the old wonderful Palais Garnier. So it's one of the biggest opera companies. It has a big tradition, especially as well for the ballet, because it's a great ballet company, and it's a wonderful orchestra, wonderful chorus, a big orchestra, because we have two houses, so we have two big groups, and we have so many possibilities, options. This Bastille, this big machine with this big stage where you could park airplanes in it. It's so big, this stage, and you can, production-wise, you can do a lot of things. And then Garnier with this incredible atmosphere, historical atmosphere. So it's a very unique place.
Now, the Paris Opera recently introduced a new promotion, €40 for the under 40s. Opera has traditionally had a problem attracting younger audiences. What else can be done to make opera more accessible, do you think?
I think this is a way. I think the most important thing is the pricing, because I think it's a question of education as well. Yeah, schools have to do more for music. If you learn an instrument, if you play an instrument, you have a different approach to music. So it's important. But that's more the social and political aspect, which is very important. What we can do is, of course, find performances for young people, reduce the pricing. Yeah, for example, what we do now is the avant-première, so the formal dress rehearsals. We make them public now for young people for €10. They can until 28.
Wow, that's a
very
good deal.
young audience.
€10.
And they come for the dress rehearsals, which is great for us as well, because we can perform in front of an audience before the premiere, but a very enthusiastic young audience until 28 years old, and it's very stimulating. And so these are little things we can do, and of course
that apparently you're working on.
Absolutely. Okay. But the Paris Opera has a lot of other projects for young people. It's called Dix mois d'école et d'opéra for young people from the suburbs. Les petits violons, they're very young kids playing their first violin classes in orchestra groups.
Wow.
It's very, very touching to see that.
Got to start them young, right? Well, exactly. Among the more accessible composers is Mozart. You shared conducting duties on Così fan tutte, which is still on at the Paris Opera. Let's roll a short clip. Now let's go quickly back to Don Carlos. I noticed more diversity than usual among the performers when I saw the performance. People of colour, blacks, Asians, which was great to see because it's so rare to see. What do you think needs to be done to encourage more diversity in opera?
You mean on stage or
yes, on stage?
On stage, I mean, I think it's the quality which counts, yeah, and that's the first thing. So I don't care about which nationality or which color or whatever. It's if this is a good singer, if this is a good actor. So take them, and then it depends on the director. Yeah, Krzysztof Walikowski has this idea about this, as you said, multicultural thing with actors on stage. And it makes it very, very rich and very diverse. And I mean, that's what opera is always in its time, and we're in the 21st century. So, of course, we cannot play Così fan tutte as in the 18th century. There are different ways, and this includes, of course, this aspect as well.
Now, you were recently named the next musical director of the Vienna State Opera for the 2020-2021 season. What are you most looking forward to when it comes to this next stage in your career?
I mean, the Vienna State Opera is just its history and its potential. The Vienna Philharmonics are the house orchestra of the opera, for example. It's just has incredible potential. And after the Paris Opera, to start a new project like that, it's very, very exciting. And it change a lot of things. It's a different house, a different function, a different way of working. But after 12 years of the Paris Opera, it's very, very exciting.
Okay. Well, finally, we always ask our guests, what's popping up on their culture radar at the moment? Philippe, you've chosen the brand new Yves Saint Laurent Museum in Marrakech. Why?
Pierre Berger was a very big supporter of the Paris Opera. He was president of honor of the Paris Opera and supported a lot of our work, especially my work with the orchestra, and was a good friend as well. And I miss him a lot. And it just happened after his death now, 1 month ago. I'm very sorry he couldn't be there for the opening of this project in Marrakech, which was so important for him. And
close to his heart.
I'm glad it's going to happen. Unfortunately, I can't be there, but you asked me for an event which is interesting those days. I think that's the right thing to mention.
Okay, well, Philippe Jordan, thank you so much for being here once again. Remember, he's conducting Verdi's Don Carlos at the Opera de Paris until the 11th of November. We'll leave you with some images of that new Yves Saint Laurent Museum in Marrakech. Catch up with previous shows on our website and stay in touch on social media. Keep it right here on France 24. Don't go away.